Hello, this is Tom Britt. West Tennessee PBS is working hard to bring you more local shows and quality PBS programs. And they need your financial help because they don't run commercials, they rely on your support. It's easy to donate. Go to their website, westtnpbs.org, and click on the Donate tab. Your donations to Channel 11 stay local and help WLJT-TV continue their mission to be as local as possible.
Everybody has enjoyed the presentation that we saw today, and we thank the producer, the director, and everything about this film for being with us today. Let's give them another round of applause. That was such an interesting film, sir, and I really do appreciate you being here with us, and so that we can commiserate with you. And I thank the audience for being here as well to look at this pressing and needed and timely film that we saw. This time we're going to discuss what we've seen. We're not going to be long, but we're going to do a good job with this panel that we have. And before we start, let me begin here and ask each panelist to please introduce themselves.
My name is Edith White. I'm from Haywood County.
My name is James Bonds, and I travel a long distance. I'm from Ripley. Those of you that don't know Ripley, Ripley is the tomato capital of the world.
Good afternoon. My name is Roderick Curry. I am from Stanton, Tennessee, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
My name is Billy Hill, and I'm from Jackson, Tennessee, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Giles Sanders, and I'm from Brownsville, Tennessee.
Let's give our panelists a hand. You know, panelists, in looking at that film, first of all, let me say this. I'm 74 years old, and I'm sure that I'm one of the oldest persons in this building, if not the oldest. You got me a few years.
Yeah. Junior.
At any rate, I lived through all that. I graduated from high school in 1968. The first time I was ever with a white student in class with me was when I went to college at Lambeth College here in 1968, the fall of 68 when I went. All during high school, black college, all during black high school, all during elementary school, black, everything was black until I went to college. Now, I noticed a lot of these things that happened there because when I was a little boy, and this is what your film really brings out, the perniciousness and the fury of black suppression and segregation and Jim Crow laws. Those laws made white people feel superior, but it also made black people feel inferior. When I was a little boy, I prayed to God to make me white because white people had everything. You go to the fair, they had the best fair. They went to the movies, they sat down here. You couldn't go swimming anywhere. You couldn't go bowling. Couldn't go to the library. It was so cruel living through that time. And to see this production that's come before us today, it really is something for us to just really think about. So I would just ask the panelists, when you saw the film, what emotional aspect of it all did you feel inside? What did it do for you emotionally, if anything? Anybody?
Richard, I was the first graduating class of JCM. It brought back some bad memories for me because I was not satisfied with having to interrupt my senior year to consolidated schools. It was a very difficult year for me. They didn't want to be there, we didn't either. And I got to a point where I went into seclusion. I didn't talk to nobody because all my friends was cross campus when they separated us. And just seeing how they treated us back then, and to see this film, it's just, because it's something they don't talk about. We never had a prom together. We never, even today, we just celebrate, the blacks just celebrated 54 years. And still, the two races have never gotten together for a class reunion.
When you went to Jackson High School, you could have gone to Mary High, and you chose Jackson Junior. You had to go.
I had to go.
You had to go.
Yeah.
And that separated you from your friend.
Yeah, it did. Because most of my friends, see, they built the bridge over the Royal, and some of the classes were at Mary High, and some were at Jackson High. So the only time I would see my friends is when I had to go to Mary High to have my classes, and they were transferred across the campus to Jackson High.
Okay.
So it was miserable.
And which others of you went to an integrated high school, graduated from an integrated high school, is my question. All right, so when you first merged, the first day you went to that integrated school, how did you feel? Anybody? How did you feel when you went for the first time?
Very, very scared. Because when I was 13 years old and going to a school that I had never knew anything about, except I had 4 older siblings who had gone the year before, who were with the first year of integration. I was with the second year of integration. So it was very, very scary, and it was heartbreaking also because for me, that first year of integration meant that it had closed the junior high school that was in our area. From our community school of two-room school, then we could go to Douglas Junior High, which we could go to for our 9th and 10th grade, which that was my ultimate goal, was to go to Douglas. So I lost out on that opportunity because I had heard my sisters talk about Douglas and all the things that they did, but their senior year, they didn't talk favorably about anything. You know, it was always hardships. So for me to go, you know, young girl, never been anywhere much other than, you know, our little community school and church, it was very different, very scary, very hard.
How were you treated by other white students?
I'll say 99.9% of them was not favorable. There were a few who treated us, you know, kindness and everything, but most of them didn't. I mean, you go down the hall, I've never heard really much the N-word until I went to high school. Never heard that. And, you know, I'm walking down the hall and they're running away from me like I had the plague or something. So.
Did that make you want to stop going to that school?
Well, that didn't matter much because our father, that didn't matter whether I don't think whether, because we weren't asked. He didn't ask each one of his children if we wanted to go. Mm-hmm. We were told that we were going, and we went.
All right, and that was Haywood County.
Haywood County.
All right, what about Lauderdale County? Well, how did you handle it when you went to school, integrated school?
I was kind of tricked into going to Ripley High School. In 1965, they passed around the form of school choice. So my whole little cohort, we all chose Lauderdale High School. But there's always one joker in the bunch. So he selected Ripley High School. So in Lauderdale, school, the first day of school was usually that Tuesday after Labor Day. So we all showed up at Lauderdale, and this other kid, he showed up, but he showed up late. And when he got there, the principal walked in the hall and asked, said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Today's the first day of school, so I come to start school." He said, "Nope, you got to go to Ripley High School." At that time, we was juniors.
So wait a minute, Ripley High School was the white high school?
Ripley High School was the white high school. Lauderdale High School was the black high school.
Right.
Lauderdale High School was established in 1904.
Okay.
And so he and another friend of mine, we went over to Ripley High School so he wouldn't have to go by himself. So when we walked into the auditorium, just 3 of us, the whole auditorium, but I don't know, we was too crazy, I suppose, to feel anything. And after that, we met the basketball coach. We were student athletes, and normally we was embraced by the coach and the athletes. So I had a pretty good time. The next day, there other students came over, and they stayed a couple of weeks, and they went back. But I was one of the first 4 to graduate from Ripley High School.
Okay. And Ms. Giles, am I calling that right?
Yes.
All right, tell us about your experience when you went in
Well,
Haywood County.
It was not a good experience. The other students were not, they didn't receive us, they didn't welcome us, or they were just mean to us, really, just walking down the hall, and like my sister said, they would just really bump into you on purpose, or if you would drink water from the water fountain, you know, they would always say, well, we can't drink behind them. And it was just, it was really frightening just to be there, and most of the teachers were not kind either. And when I was watching the film earlier, I saw it was a young black man sitting in front of a sewing machine, and there was a white teacher that was standing over him as she was helping him. That really brought back a lot of emotions, because I took home ec, and my home ec teacher, she was the most racist person I've ever met. And she would never help us, and you know, it was just always, when you would get there, you had the sewing machine, and you had to know how to thread the machine. Well, if you didn't thread it right, you know, you couldn't sew, the thread would break. And she would never take the time to show us how to thread the machine or do anything, and then class was over, and it starts all over again, you know, day after day. But I would go home, my mother was a seamstress, and she would show me how to thread the machine and how to lay out my pattern and all of that. And that's really the only way I made it, because my teacher never helped me with anything.
How would you do it when you go to the cafeteria to eat? Would black people be in one place and whites would be everybody else, or would y'all merge together?
No, it was all segregated. The black students sat together. There were very few of us at the school, very few black students, maybe, maybe about 40 black students. So we always sat together, and of course the whites sat together too.
All right, let me ask you about black teachers at your school. Would you go to them to get some kind of consolation, or would they come to you to try to help you out? What was the dependency among black teachers and black students at those schools? Anybody?
I don't think they had a lot of, they didn't
Get
have.
the mic.
They were trying to survive themselves. I mean, they were nice to us, but as far as having a comrade I could go to, I don't think that was there, because they were really trying to survive, and the children were allowed to mistreat them just like they mistreated us. They mistreated the teachers. And so what would a black teacher do? What could a black teacher do? Who were they gonna go tell? Because they weren't gonna believe them. You couldn't take a black teacher pretty much couldn't take a white student to the office. There was no discipline there for them, and they knew it, and they enjoyed intimidating teachers as well as, you know, us students.
All right. Sir, I think you were gonna say something?
Yeah, at Lauderdale, at Ripley High School, we didn't have any black teachers over there my first year. My senior year, we had two that came over, and one of them was a business teacher, and they put me in her class, and she taught me how to type. Now, if I had stayed at Lauderdale High School, I would have never taken typing. But because she taught me how to type, I built a career on what she taught me. So that I was a benefactor for her being over there.
Yes.
I can identify with the school district in Leland. I had an opportunity to teach school in Como, Mississippi at the North Panola Consolidated School District, and a lot of the things that was depicted on the movie, I experienced there in the Consolidated School District, and I thought it was an outstanding film and depiction. I really do appreciate that. And but to get to the question about when I attended Hayward High School, it was integrated, I looked at it as being challenging by itself, because I felt like that I was as equal as anybody else, and that I could do what any other particular student would do, regardless of what color they may have been. And also the teachers, they're just thinking back, I had Mr. Giles, he was one of the teachers that I knew, and our teacher was highly qualified. And so I went in with a positive attitude, like I've continued to do throughout my life. And it was challenges there, it was some biases there, but I continued to do what I know I could do, what my parents had taught me to do.
You know, I believe, I heard some of you say, it might have been in the film, that when you went to school, I know it certainly happened to me, that your textbooks that you were given, it had somebody else's names in them.
Yeah.
On the first line, then we would get them like about 3 or 4 years later.
Yep.
It would talk about President Kennedy being the President of the United States. By the time we got it, he had been assassinated.
Yep.
Did you feel any kind of special way when you got over to those integrated schools and you got your books and there was a new book? Did that catch you any kind of way, or did you think anything about that? I guess so. I guess you didn't think anything about that.
Well, I didn't really think anything about it, but I do remember hearing my sister, who was one of the first blacks to graduate from Haywood High in Brownsville. I remember hearing her say that that was the first time she had ever received a new textbook, and how it smelled different from the book she'd had in the past.
Based upon what you know now, do you feel that it would have been best for in education for schools to be separate but equal? Separate but really equal.
I think if we could have stayed separate but equal, when I was at LHS, I had more confidence in myself. If I made a bad grade on a test, I know it because I deserved it. And I got more tender love and care because the teachers, they was in my, they was at church with me, they went to the grocery store with me, so it was more of a community. So I would, if everything could have been equal, I would have loved to have stayed in the black school.
Mr. Hill?
Richard, I would have rather stayed separate. And I tell everybody, I don't like to talk about that senior year a lot, but my answer when they ask me how I enjoyed my year, there's only one good answer I can tell them, and that is that I met my wife.
All right.
I would go to class, and after class, I would go to the steps, sit down after every period. And she would come through on lunch, and I met her through another friend 54 years ago. And Christmas, we'll celebrate 48 years of marriage.
All right.
And that's my only good thing about
All
the
right.
education.
Okay, all right. All right. You see, when it's cold outside, you got your month of May and your wife. Just here, stand up so they can see you. So that was a nice thing he said about you. There she is back there. All right. Now,
Can I go back
Yes-
and
yes,
say,
ma'am.
one thing when you mentioned about the black teachers? I think I was a junior before we got black teachers came to our school. So you didn't have the camaraderie that you would have. I didn't grow, from high school, I didn't start with black teachers. So they didn't come until I think I was a junior. And so that meant the school had been open already 3 years before, they started, before black teachers came.
how did you all handle when you saw something that occurred and just say a white student did something she or she shouldn't have done, but had the black teacher, and you knew that the black teacher needed to handle that, but in some instances they wouldn't handle it because they didn't have the authority to handle it. If you saw that, how did that make you feel?
Well, for me, to this day, I don't understand algebra. And we had a black teacher that had come in, and I had always heard that he was the best math teacher in the county. But those children would not let him teach. They would laugh, make fun of him, laugh over in the corner playing, and he's at the board throwing, spitballs at him or whatever, things like that. And he couldn't teach. But what could he do about it? Couldn't do much about it. And so that went on for a whole year, and I say because of that, to this day, I don't understand algebra. I still say ABCs and 1, 2, 3, they don't mix. Because, I mean, I never got the basic of it, because from day one, they didn't let him teach.
And based upon your experiences during the integration, whatever that experience might be, knowing what you know now, and if you had the authority to put something in place or to change something, what would you have changed back then that you think would have been better for the whole ending of segregation? Start with you, Ms. Job.
Well, I think if the teachers had been more helpful, that would have been a wonderful thing. I didn't feel like I was welcome, and no one embraced me. No one said, you belong here. So I just think if someone had made us feel like we belonged in the students and the teachers, I think that would have been a great thing.
I think mine is a little different because there's only 3 of us. And when you're in a small number, they treat you different. I had a pretty good senior year. When I graduated, I had 4 offers to different colleges, and it's not because I was a good student. It was because I had been trained how to get along with people. So, more opportunities was available because I had attended that school.
I think if there had been more situations or more programs designed to get the students to interact with one another more and better, and that may have kind of helped the climate a little bit better in the school system, but basically I think if we had just had more interactions among each other with different programs or different activities, that may have helped.
I think if, in my school year, there were several black male teachers, and they were good to all of us, especially the young men. They would tell us stuff that we needed to know. But when they combined the schools, they took away a lot of their authorities. You know, they all became like, say, the principal, might have been in my school, became assistant principal.
Right. That's right.
Football coach became assistant football
right.
coach, both of them. And that left us with bad attitudes about how they were doing this.
Yeah.
I think that they just been taught that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think before they could have compassion for us, they had to be untaught. They were taught that way. And that's why they treated us that way. And even though I think they knew that it was wrong, but they couldn't go against their culture and their beliefs. And I think that's why the students and the teachers, treated us the way that they did.
And in keeping what Mr. Hill said, during the time of the Civil Rights Movement, the goal was integration. Integration, everybody get together and integrate. But from what my vantage point in seeing that is that to white people, integration meant assimilation. Mm-hmm. It didn't mean you get together and just do things together. It meant that you come into our culture and you accept what we do. So that goes back to what Mr. Hill said. We had finest coaches over at Mary High School there. Had the finest principals there. Alec Moore was a fine principal there, but he went over to Jackson High School, became the assistant principal. You had Professor White and Terry Oman Arena. Both of them were principals, but when it happened over there, our principal, black principal, became an assistant principal. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Mr. Fan. Mr. Fan and somebody else who was black, Fan got the principalship. So everything that happened, like he just said, we were assimilated into what they did rather than being a true integration among both societies. When I was I'm going to ask you a question about this. This was a funny aside. When I was at Lambeth College, first year, I was one of 6 black students there, and they had freshman orientation, and that night they had a dance. And so at the dance, there was a pretty white girl there, and there were about 5 or 6 of us black guys. One of my friends said he was going to go and ask that white girl to dance. And I said, boy, you crazy, don't you do that? And so he said, I'm going to do it. And so when he said that, I left, because I didn't want to be involved with nothing like that. Found out later he did not do it. But when you all over there, was there any kind of racial aspects done up because of a white girl may have been interested in a black boy, or a black young man interested in a white girl? Did that ever come before you in any kind of way, where you saw it?
I did.
Get the mic.
I tell you, my wife and I talk about it all the time. The only friend that I had was a Jewish white girl. For some reason, she had some racial issues too, and she sat along in the class with me, and I was over here sitting along. Some kind of way we bonded, and I won't call her name because she's very rich now, and but the other white kids eventually caught on. They thought we were dating, which we were not, and they began to call me. I would come sit at my desk, and that might be the N-word on my desk. But they never left anything on hers, but it was just me, because I don't think all of them knew she was Jewish. And but other than any other white girls, I couldn't tell you a name of a white girl that was in my class. I mean, I stayed away from my dad had taught me that young, but for some reason me and her bonded, but I think it came more from her than me.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a situation like that at all? None? All right. Are there any questions that any of you in the audience might care to ask of the panelists? Now's your time. Anybody? You don't have to be shy. Yes, ma'am.
I know 2 of you, or I think maybe 3, are educators.
Just keep it out there.
Those of you on the panel who are educators, did your teaching style, was it impacted by your experience with integration?
Well, me personally, as I look at it as an educator, I want to look at what can we do now. I know, as Mr. Blackman said about the school vouchers, and that's going to change the whole concept of education in the future, but where do we go from here? What can we do? And my concept is to try to find ways to combat school vouchers and make the whole school system better the way it is now.
Well, as a teacher, I just try to have all my students feel like they were included in everything, and just to be a part of all the activities, and not to single anyone out or make anyone feel bad about something they may have said or done, but just to include and just to make everyone feel special and that they belong.
I believe you said that you were an athlete, which is why you went to Ripley. Is that correct? No.
What did he say?
Were you an athlete?
Yes, yes.
Would you say, for all of you, that athletes got preferential treatment regardless from which race to benefit the school?
I would agree with that, yes. Yes, I would agree with that. The athlete, they included us. We ate with them at lunch. We ate steaks and all that good stuff. We improved the team, which improved the school. Yeah, we did get preferential treatment, yes.
Yes, I have a question. I'm probably directing this question to Dr. Curry only because I have the yearbook. And my question is, I think, your 1973 yearbook from Haywood High School.
Yes.
And in that yearbook, I noticed there is, I'm most likely to see white, I'm most likely to see black, I'm most athletic white, I'm most athletic black, all those different categories. And my question is, what was the dynamics inside of the school that figured out how to select those people? How did that happen? What were the dynamics that made that happen that way?
I think we had a class presidents and officers, and basically they got together and then they selected based on those parameters. I always wondered about that myself. But that was a very good question, and we always had a white most likely to succeed, a black most likely to succeed. But I think that was just a way to get the schools integrated and making everyone feel more comfortable together at the particular time and circumstances that was going on at that particular time.
I mean, I guess I was wondering, did they say to the white kids, you select your superlatives, and black kids, you select yours? I mean, that just...
I don't think they did that. I think that when we had the class officers, they would get together and then they would determine who would be selected.
So what, it wasn't an election by the student body?
No, it was not.
Who did the selecting?
The officers of the classes.
Oh, and everybody just accepted it. Anybody else?
Well, I was going to ask that excuse me, one thing that's interesting to me, going back and looking at all this, has been to realize that I think one thing that happened in a lot of places, sounds like it fits with your stories, and thank you for your stories, by the way. I'm always amazed when I hear anybody talk about that period of time and these experiences, and just what cinematically good, bad, or just such dramatic human stories that people went through in this period of time. It's really amazing. But I think one of the big things that happened was that the definition of success changed. And where in the beginning, like Dr. King's definition of success was going to be some sort of integration, to lay the foundation of a multiracial society somehow, and that having kids grow up together would be the backbone of that. But then after all of the big events of the 60s, including his assassination and the violence at some of the early places of integration, that the definition changed to how do we comply with federal law? How do we get the courts off our backs and not have violence? Essentially, just keep the peace. And so the definition of success became not does everybody come together, but did we comply with the law and there was no violence, there was no disturbance that came with it. And certainly that was the case in my town, of where it was a success. Successful integration just meant that the law had been complied with, but nobody got hurt. There wasn't a big fight. There wasn't a riot. The white supremacists didn't show up, and the fact that the integration never quite happened, but it just sort of faded off. That was no longer what it was about. But that takes me a little bit, and also I think that's where the having black and white homecoming queens and all those things was sort of a part of that. Let's find a way that we'll still always going to be the white high school's mascot that everybody has to come under, all that sort of stuff. But we'll keep the peace by avoiding that, that one or the other has to be picked. But in terms of the today, what you guys think about today, I do wonder if we've sort of stumbled into the integrated society we have today. We have a it's actually still pretty remarkable how integrated American society has become, even with all these struggles. But it's been a kind of stumbling thing forward, and I wonder, I just wonder about the future too, and if we'd had segregated but genuinely equal for a longer period of time. A lot of people today have nostalgia for that idea, I think, but I just wonder where would that bring us, is there a way that we become a a fully, authentically integrated society? What do you think?
Panelists? Sounds like panelists. Go, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I think that's what God intended for us to do, to be unified as a people, even in education. And so we're going to have to somehow put God back into our school systems as far as the way it should be, as far as everyone getting along, educational programs, being equal regardless if we use school vouchers or whatever, but it need to be unified as I perceive what God wants us to do.
You know, Supreme Court said back in 1954, when they were talking about separate but equal, they said there's no such thing as separate or equal, because separate means that it's inherently unequal. So we won't go back to that. That won't work, and I would be against that totally. I can understand the sentiments that are involved. You know, it seems as though you may have, you got a better education, you had people that nourished you, those kinds of things. But separate and equal just won't work. And so I don't know where we'll go. I know that by this, even though we've had all the problems that we've had, I think we are a better society today because of the push back on segregation. And I'll go all the way with that. So based upon all of that, we'll just have to see where we go in the future. And this is a question that I want to ask to my white counterparts who are here. And as I said, I know I'm 74, so you're not as old as me. But what I've always wondered, that during this period of time of the social upheaval, civil rights struggle, what were your parents and your grandparents telling you at home about the civil rights struggle, about black people? Just what were they saying? What were they telling you? I can imagine, and I don't mean this to be an affront, but some of your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents were racist. That they were. It was just that time. But what were they saying to you about us and about the struggle? Would anybody share that while we're here right now? Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Get the mic.
one set of my grandparents died really young, but my Mississippi grandparents never talked about it. But I know they were extremely racist. My parents were not, and they were very religious people. And I remember as a young child, there was a woman who went to our church who was black that didn't have a car, and we used to go pick her up every Sabbath and take her to church with us. And I remember my parents talking to us about her and saying, that because we had moved from Massachusetts to Mississippi, and so they made, I think, a concerted effort to not let us fall into that society of, being racist against black people. So they talked to us about her and about how she was just like us and we should love everybody and all those things. But growing up down there in South Mississippi, you definitely saw racism everywhere. And I remember in elementary school, this kid, his name was Chester Gowdy, and me and him became really good friends, like from 2nd grade on. And I remember in 5th grade, he asked me to be his girlfriend. And I loved Chester, like we were buddies. But I said no, because I knew somewhere back in there that it was a no-no. And I got to see him this year at my 40th class reunion and hug his neck, and it was so wonderful. But yeah, it was always there, just under the surface, even though my parents taught us differently. But my grandparents never talked about it, but they were seriously racist.
Okay. Anybody else care to share? You don't have to.
Well, I'll share on anything. I'll say it real fast. Like I said earlier, my parents were both breakaways from the farm on both sides, and they grew up 100 miles apart. My mother's parents were racist, but they were sort of and everybody in that generation, and most of my mother's siblings, at least like as of early adulthood, we're all kind of standard white races, not out of their minds, white races, not looking for violence, kinds of people, but they were as fundamentally racist as you would expect, basically. And use the N-word all the time, some of my uncles more than others. My mom's father, who for me was the absolute definition of manhood. He was, as a boy, I viewed him as the embodiment of who I was supposed to be in every way. But he was very racist. Now, at the same time, he also showed great kindness. I mean, they didn't have any money or have anything, but there was a black couple that lived on a piece of land that they rented right next to my grandparents. And that man had fought in World War II, and my grandfather was on the negotiating committee at the mill where he worked for most of his life, and he stepped in to kind of ensure that black man was treated fairly on some occasions, like when he was being denied his veterans benefits. And so there was this weird mix of human decency, but also fundamental racism. But as a kid, I was very confused by what my parents were saying related to race was certainly that if I ever said the N-word in the presence, like in my house or in the presence of, ever under any circumstances, that would have been just astronomical kind of offense. And exactly how my parents got to that level of how forbidden any kind of expression of racism was, I don't entirely understand, except that I guess they were fundamentally decent people. But it was incredibly confusing to me that my grandfather represented all these values that were so important to me, but would use the N-word, and finally at some point I had to ask my mom about it, and then he would always get he's a man of his time, that would be that thing. But then on my father's side, they were just all hysterically racist, and the man of, the people of their time explanation had to be really stretched. But on that side, there were people who were violent, and or certainly given the opportunity would have been violent, and they were hostile to the changes that my parents went through, and the way they were raising their children.
Were you being taught though at school, at home, that were you being taught racism, or you just saw it and just knew what it meant? Did your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents say those black people, they're inferior to us, don't bother, don't mess with them, they are no good, things of that nature? Did they come out like that and teach you that, or you just saw the way they acted and you knew?
Well, the latter. My parents were teaching, don't you dare be like that in any way. Don't you ever say a racist thing, don't you ever. Now, they probably, in hindsight, they didn't talk as much about that. They didn't teach anti-racism probably as much as they should have. It should have been even more explicit. But once they had made this change, and where my mom talks about it in the film, it dawned on her when she was presented with the prejudices against these Native American kids up in North Carolina. That's when it hit her that, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, and so it doesn't make any sense the way that I've been taught to treat black people, or the way that black people get treated. And that was the beginning of their transformation. But by the time I'm coming along, my brothers, it was absolutely explicitly forbidden that we would ever say anything. But meanwhile, my more distant relatives are still acting racist, but it basically was, we just don't talk about that. We don't talk about that contradiction, there's nothing we can do about what your cousins or your aunts and uncles, how they talk, but you can't talk that way, ever.
All right. Before we close, I give the panelists the opportunity to... I have a comment, sir. I'm sorry, excuse me. Where is that?
We don't need to forget that there...
Wait for the mic then. Okay.
Hello. We don't need to forget that currently there is still racism. I'm a pretty smart black woman, and I retired out of state government, and I would have clients to come into my office and they would say, you're smart, but you're still black. I said, yeah. I said, then sometimes I'd have a little smart ASS attitude, and I would say, yeah, but I'm on this side of the desk, and you're on that side of the desk.
All right.
And so sometimes I think, yeah, we're educated, and that's great, wonderful, proud of it. But to some, that doesn't mean anything. Because you know, I've been called the N-word. Yeah, you just a smart ASS NIGGA. And I said, well, if that's the way you see it, but you had to come to this smart ASS NIGGA's office. Now, what we gonna do? And then there were some that would come back and apologize. They were like, well, you know, we hadn't ever had any conversations with a black woman. We just, you know, we had been told all of this, you know, that they're this, and this. And they're like, but, you know, you're a good one. And see, I've heard that a lot in my life.
Yeah.
You're a good one,
Yeah.
you know. And I said, well, I think you need to be re-educated. And I said, if I had enough time, I would get started on you, but I don't have enough time right now. But we just still need to know that there is this systemic racism, and a lot of it is done on paper now, where we can be gotten with, on paper, with credit, with different things. So it's still there. I just want to just reiterate, it's still there.
Thank you very much. And last words from the panelists. Let's get the mic in their last words, comments.
I just want to comment on something Mr. Ashworth had mentioned about the two separate, like superlatives, one black group and one white. And that went on for a long time at Hayward High, for many years. And when I graduated in 1971, I was the first class that was consolidated from Carver High School and Hayward High School. Carver High School, the black school. And our class president had to be white. I believe I had it right. And the vice president was black, and so on. And that went on for quite a few years also, that each year it alternated. I think the class president, I can't remember for sure, but I think the class president was white and the vice president was black. And then the next year it flipped. So that went on for quite a while.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been great. I recently just moved back home, like some of the people that's on the move in the film. I spent the last 40 years in Boston, and my main purpose to come back home is try to work with the youth. Not exactly sure what I'm gonna do, but I know that something needs to be done.
Right.
Where we spend more our young men going to prison. You cannot raise a family, cannot make black babies if you're locked up. So I'm trying to work with them, trying to help them to become a father and a citizen.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman, for that film. It was very enlightening to me, and as president of the Pilgrims Rest Community Center, I'm gonna show that film to the community. And I think that lack of exposure among cultures is one of the main problems of racism. So if we can all get together and have more events like this, and showing your movie to the entire community, regardless of what race it is, so that people in the community can get to know what actually happened and how it feels to be in somebody else's shoes. And so, but I just want to thank you for that. It really was enlightening to me, and so I think we need to have more events like this.
I retired in 2009. And I sit around and I decided I needed to do something. And a friend of mine called me, asked me would I like to drive a school bus. And my kids said, "Dad, are you crazy?" I said, "Well, I gotta do something. I just can't sit in this house And then my wife retired too, so she rode the travel. I said, well, that costs money all the time, man. But anyway, to make a long story short, I decided to drive school bus. I've been driving now for 14 years. And every year, my goal is that I'm gonna make a difference in one of these children's lives.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I see it, it is the joy of my year. And I've said so far, when I can't see it, I'll sit down.
Yeah.
But I've been driving 14 years and I see it every year. I drive whites, Hispanics, blacks, and they're all sweet kids.
All right.
And I just want to make a difference.
All right.
We're the ones who have to make a difference. You're the one.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Is that on?
But I retired in 2021, 47 years in public education. In the last, probably the last 12 or 13 of those years I was in administration. And I have seen a lot of things come and a lot of things go. But for events like this, the one thing that bothers me is the number of young people who come to events like this to see. Because I always say young people think it's been like this always. This is the way they're living, their lifestyle, that's all they know. And I'm always glad to see young people at events like this where they can learn, you know, how it was, and then I think they'll be able to appreciate it more, their lifestyle. But I just think, you know, for some way for us is to, when we have events like this, is to try to encourage our young people to come so they'll see and know and learn from this.
That's right. Let's give the panel a hand, please.
The program you've been watching was made possible through the generous financial support of West Tennessee PBS viewers like you. Please visit westtnpbs.org and make a donation today so that we can continue to make local programs like this possible. Thank you.